A black company will give somebody that has been convicted of a felon that looks just like them an opportunity, but the whole time they're still looking at them like a criminal. They're not giving them that leeway to grow and develop without being stood over and made to feel uncomfortable. How can you function like that? And by
You
law,
can't.
yeah, by law, that work environment is hostile, right?
Yes, it's the book of freedom, and it's about revolution. What's one revolutionary thing I can do? Give my platform to other businesses to just have a spotlight and talk about what they're doing in the community. So, my brother, take it away. I'm gonna let you just talk, and then I'm gonna ask you questions. So,
Okay.
what do you want the people to know?
I want to start with that word that you just use, revolution.
Oh
One
yeah.
complete turn of a circle,
Mm,
360 degrees. And when I look at 360 degrees, although we know that is relative of a square or a circle, 490-degree angles or one complete turn. A lot of times we use it in terms of our birthdays. You know, a lot of times we use it in terms of measuring right angles on a square, which shows a perfect curve. But it's also relative to us, the individuals, that we go through each year as a complete cycle to begin another cycle. And with that being
mm.
said, when we go through one complete cycle to begin another cycle, we should not be stuck in that cycle that we just supposedly had completed. Because we stay stuck in there, you know what we tend to do? What's inevitable?
Well, what's gonna happen?
We cut our future off.
Mm.
Or
Why
we
you
just
say that? Why you say that? Why? How does you going through this your starting point from last year? You going through this whole revolution, and you saying going through those same cycles. How does that cut off the future?
because you stay stuck in a past reality of your life and try
Mm.
to move forward to the future reality of your life.
Are you replaying the same loop over and over again?
Yes. And it's a
Mm.
psychological process and an emotional process.
Mm.
And it's sort of like being in a prison, you know,
Ooh.
living in the past and not allowing yourself to progress to the more evolved you.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, see, now that you started the conversation this way, you kind of got to tell the people who you are and
Okay.
what your whole mission is and how you get this insight. So tell me who you are. Tell me about the company and
Okay.
what all you do.
Okay. Yes, I run it that you said that because my fiance just told me you need to introduce yourself. So yes, and I thank God for her. But I want to tell the audience that my name is Derrick Warner. I am the CEO founder of React Corporation. And what is React Corporation? React is an acronym that means requital, etching, absolute change together. And what is requital? We know in a court of law, people are requited of charges that they have been accused of by virtue of evidence that has been provided that they are other than that character. Because we understand human nature, we understand people don't do things as a base part of who they are, more so because of how they've been influenced to respond to a situation. So requital is giving people an opportunity to show and prove who they truly are, the real person, and not what they're doing to respond to certain conditions and circumstances. Etching is to bring together, to sew, to write, to carve it, to etch. Absolute means totally change. That is, again, that revolution. And we do it together by encouraging, inspiring, and giving each other the resources we need to become better individuals so that holistically we can be a better community.
So you're helping them get back to who they were before they became who they had to be.
Yes.
And you're etching that into them like through this change.
Yes.
That's hard. That's hard. That's hard. How long have you been running this? How long have you been doing this?
So React as a 501c3 going on 2 years now. But just the work in general, right at about 20 years.
20 years. You said 2 years ago for the 501c3.
Yes.
So what made you go ahead and, if you've been doing it for 20 years, what made you step up and be like, I got to do this way. I want to do it this way.
Well, the need for a bigger platform to have a greater influence on people that need help is one of those reasons.
So you wanted it to be, because you were already doing it, but you wanted it to be this. You might have been doing it here, but you consolidated this here.
Yes. Yes. Also, I have a story.
I'll speak on it.
Yeah. So at 18 years of age, I was in a situation that caused me to go into the penal system for almost 30 years, 26 and a half to be exact.
Sheesh.
Yeah. So while being there, I began to understand the situation for what it's worth. Because, when you are in a situation where you are not being distracted by daily activities that comes with just living a life in the world, you have more time to think, to process, to internalize. And I began to realize, first and foremost, people that get in those kind of situations get in them because of trauma that has not been addressed. And when you begin to address that trauma, you begin to awaken parts of yourself that you probably didn't even know existed. And, when I began to become self-aware, I began to do more things to make me be the person that I imagined myself to be in my own mind, and not what everybody else wanted me to be. I started living in my purpose.
Well, I have a question for you then. What was the shift inside? Because just because you be in there don't make the shift happen.
Not for everybody. And it's two examples that I want to use. Jonah, when Jonah was on the ship and he had set sail, God had given him a mission, a calling. And Jonah, he wasn't worried about that. He was worried about himself. But when he got on that ship, things began to happen. They had to draw straws to determine who was going to be left on the ship and who was going to be thrown over. And we know the story. Jonah was thrown over into the ocean and swallowed up by a whale. And while in the belly of the beast, Jonah began to pray. And then God's protection began to cover him. Now, when you're in a belly, you're in the midst of digestive acids that intend to decompose you so that particular animal trying to digest his food can do it easily. But even in the midst of that belly, Jonah wasn't affected by the acids, to the fact that after a period of time, that whale was forced to spit him back out unscathed. And that's my story, brother. Although I was in that condition, it didn't affect me in a way that was negative. As a matter of fact, it produced a more polished individual because I had time to process and understand that God had a purpose for my life. And I began to live that purpose while inside. I began to run a program that was for the purpose of helping brothers become self-educated, and not educated academically, but educated on a mental and spiritual level to understand who they were as individuals, and that they weren't what they committed. That was what they did. That wasn't who they was, and that there's a greater them. I did that for a little over 15 years.
So boom, 20 years doing it because you lived it, and then 2 years of the nonprofit, the 501c3. Tell me some of the events that y'all do now, and then the next question I'm gonna ask you is, where do you want this to go? What do you want to happen?
Currently, we have hosted a back to school giveaway last year. This year, we're about to do one again, July 26th. We have hosted a Stop the Violence event. We've hosted a coat drive. We just get out, man, and try to connect with other organizations to be supportive. We've done men's mental health in different various counties in the state of Georgia, particularly Atlanta, where we just talk about mental health and understanding that it's okay not to be okay. I'm also a certified peer specialist for addictive diseases, so we deal with that, talking to guys about understanding what addiction is and that it's a disease, and you have to see it for what it's worth and that it can be healed. You can heal yourself from that. We're just trying to get involved in whatever ways we're able to help people become better people.
In the process of writing this show, it began September of 2019. And I remember when I wrote the first song, I wasn't in the space. When I wrote it, I said, this is great. But I wasn't in the space mentally that I could receive all the greatness that I now see of it. So the past 6 years has been that purification time, being burnt, being broken down, just to be rebuilt, just to be like, you don't know who you are. And every time I get into that space where I'm like, I'm stuck, it's low, I can't move. God's like, you don't remember? Like, do you not remember right now? And I think he takes me to those places just so that I can remember sometimes, because he's like, where you going, I'm going to need you to have this. I'm going to need you to be a little bit stronger I'm gonna need you to be a little bit more locked in and tapped in, because it's gonna be so many people looking after you. Like, you gonna look after them, but they're gonna be looking up to you. And I need you to go ahead and like stand like I want you to stand. So that's the thing. I'm 26 right now. I'm excited to see where I'm gonna be like when I hit 50. In this process of doing this show, the main thing I saw was, well, we're doing these shows, and it's not just me doing shows. The logistics of putting on a show is the same as the logistics for shooting a short film, a TV series. In my mind, I want to lower the recidivism rate in the first place. I just wish they had another path out. Yes, trades, but I know that creative aspect, that aspect that connects us to God. I want them to be able to tap into that and have an actual avenue to see something that they envisioned in their mind become something so much bigger than just the seed that's in their mind.